this is what God's called us to do, is to be servant leaders. It almost sounds like this doesn't add up, but my previous thought of leadership, and God was dealing with me because my previous thought of leadership is growing up as an athlete, I thought of leadership as one way. I thought of leadership was a place of power, a place of control, someone that makes decisions, someone maybe that is really talented or someone that is really skilled. And I want to tell you tonight that doesn't really make a great leader, even though sometimes if you played sports, you see oftentimes the leader is the person that's the best player. And when I played sports, I was oftentimes on my baseball team, I was one of the best players, so I was often looked at as a leader. And so what I've learned that I came to God, that leadership looks totally different than how I grew up thinking leadership was, because I used my leadership, I abused it. I abused my leadership. Before I knew Christ, I abused the leadership that I had. I would take advantage of it, almost use my power to not good things. I could be late to practice because, they're not going to bench me, right? That's how I looked at leadership. I took advantage of the role that I had. And true leadership actually is the reverse, is that we would lead by example and be servants rather than take advantage. So what we're going to do is we're going to open up in the book of Matthew chapter 20, and it's going to be 20 through 28. You can pull up. It's a long portion of scripture that we're going to read through tonight. So if you guys could all pull up there, Matthew chapter 20, verse 20 through 28, and it reads like this. It says, "Then the mother of James and John, the sons of Zebedee, came to Jesus with her sons. She knelt respectfully to ask a favor. And he said, 'What is your request?' he asked. She replied, 'In your kingdom, please let my 2 sons sit in place of honor next to you, one on your right and the other on your left.' But Jesus answered by saying to them, 'You don't know what you are asking. Are you able to drink from the bitter cup of suffering I am about to drink?' 'Oh, yes,' they replied, 'we are able.'" I want to stop right there real quickly, because as they're saying, we are able to take this drink that you are going to take. And that's kind of what our faith looks like in the very beginning. We're like, "God, I will do whatever you've asked me to do." And we don't quite know what we're really asking for. That's what faith looks like. It says, "God, whatever you want me to do, I'm game. I'm going to do it." And Jesus says, "I don't know that you really know what you're asking for. Are you really going to drink of this cup?" And at the time, they just said, "Yeah, we'll do whatever we got to do to sit with you, we will do it." So in 23, Jesus told them, "You will indeed drink from my bitter cup, but I have no right to say who will sit on my right or my left. My Father has prepared those places for the ones he has chosen." In 24, it says, "When the 10 other disciples heard what James and John had asked, they were indignant. But Jesus called them together and said, 'You know that the rulers in this world lord it over their people, and officials flaunt their authority over those under them. But among you, it will be different.'" Everyone say different. "Whoever wants to be a leader among you must be your servant. And whoever wants to be first among you must become your slave. For even the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve others and to give his life as a ransom for many." Wow. That was powerful. This scripture directly, as I'm up here preaching it, God was dealing with me in this manner. Because I know that I could really recognize what they were saying, because they said they want to be great. In other words, they wanted to be first. And I don't think that it was a bad thing that they wanted to be first or great. Is there anyone competitive people that want to be first in everything they do? We got some competitive people. So if you know me a little bit, you know that I'm super competitive. If it's cornhole, if it's golf, if it's basketball, softball, whatever I do, I want to be first. I hate to lose. One of my most dramatic, worst losses when Pastor Josh beat me in bowling. I was like, I can't believe that ever happened. That was a hard loss for me. I'm like, he's not more athletic than me. He should not beat me. But he beat me. God had to humble me. So I want to be that person. I want to be first in everything to do. I want to be great in everything. And I don't think that it's a bad thing that if we want to be great in what we do. I think we should all have that desire. It's a God-given desire to be great at whatever we do. Whatever we put our minds to, whatever we put to do, God says, I want you to be great in that. That's not a bad thing. But what God does to them is he reroutes how they're going to be great. I want you to catch that. He reroutes the path to be great. Because they had this thought of what great looked like, what first place looked like, and God says, it's okay that you want to be great and you want to be first, but it's going to be a lot different than what you think. Because I think when the Messiah was going to come, they thought the Messiah was going to look a lot different. Hey, we're going to roll over all these people, we're going to get our nation back, and we're just going to take over countries. And Jesus says, no, we didn't come to do that. It's going to be different than the way that you think. And so as a leader, Jesus is the leader, is saying this leadership is going to look a lot different than you think. So they want to sit with Jesus. They did get that right. But Jesus is like, I'm not really sure if you know what you're really asking. But they did know one thing. They did get this right. They were all in on Jesus. They were all in on Jesus. That was one thing they did get right. It would almost be like this. If you knew your stock was going to take off the next day, what would you do? You'd get all your money and you'd put it all in, right? If you knew the next day a stock was going to take off, you'd get all your money, you'd pull your savings, and you'd put it in. If you knew a tornado was coming the very next day, I know we live in California, we don't really deal with that at all. We don't really deal with bad weather at all. But if there was like someplace there was like a tornado going to take, I lived in Texas, so when the tornado came, I didn't know what to do. I was calling people, I was like, what do you do when a tornado comes? And they were like, you go into a bathtub. And I'm like, that does not seem safe. But they're like, the bathtub is the safest place you go. So I hid in the bathtub. And I didn't know when to get out. So I was like, they're like, the tornado passed like an hour ago. You can get out of your bathtub. So I was sitting in a bathtub. I had no idea what to do. But if you knew a tornado was coming, you would find safety. And that the same thing is what these brothers did. They didn't get it all right. But if you really, really believe in Jesus, then you would put all of your faith, that you'd put all of your resources, you would put all your finances, you'd put everything into him. And that's what they did. They did get that right. Maybe they got the path to get there wrong, but they knew one thing, they were going to go all in on Jesus. And that's what God's calling us to do. So Jesus reroutes the path of leadership. He said they lorded over the Gentiles. They took advantage of them. But we're going to do this a little bit different. We're going to be the light of the world. We're going to be the salt of the earth. We're going to lead differently. And I could see the disciples were probably a little bit bummed out when they heard this. Because whether it's in your house, whether it's around your friends, your community, wherever it is that you are called to be a leader. You are called to be a leader. Pastor Josh spoke about this in the first week, is that we know that we are called to be leaders. So we don't have to doubt that anymore, but how are we going to lead? Because God has scattered his people in so many different areas of these communities. It could be all the way from San Jose to Los Baños to Hollister to Gilroy. But God has scattered us all to be leaders wherever we're at. So leadership is not a position, but it is a calling. It's not a question if we are called to lead, but it's how we lead. So I asked this question to God, and God was dealing with me because I asked this question to God, and I was saying, God, what do you want me to do next? And I was praying this prayer for weeks on weeks, and I kept praying, God. I said, God, what do you want me to do? Do you want me to start a new ministry? God, do you want me to start a new small group? I said, God, do you want me to play an instrument? God, do you want me to sing? Luckily, God told me no, too. So God was like, no, that's not your calling. But I did this. I constantly prayed, and I waited on God to say, what is it that you want me to do? And God simply said this. And it was weeks after weeks of praying, and I kept patiently waiting for God, and all God said was, serve my people. That's all he said. He said, serve my people. I was probably like these guys wanting this great answer from God. Like, hey, I want you to preach to thousands. All these things. I want you to start a new ministry. It's gonna just be very fruitful. And I was kind of hoping for something like that. Maybe God did tell me, hey, learn the guitar. I'll look cool up there. But God didn't do that. He said, all I want you to do is to serve my people. And so it humbled me. And it put me in a new place of my heart. Was like, okay, God, this is what you want me to do. Wherever I am at, whatever you have me right now, just serve people. Serve people. So how do we lead? How do we lead? Harry Truman had this quote. It says, "You can accomplish anything if you don't care who gets the credit." So we have to lead without any recognition. When we seek applause of people, we miss the entire point. When we seek the applause of people, we miss the entire point. We also have to lead hidden. When we can lead hidden, we get noticed by God. When we lead hidden, we can get noticed by God. And I can tell you, there is a lot of people at Legacy right now that get zero recognition. That they don't get seen. They're not up here speaking. They don't get the mic. But the people that are behind the cameras, they never get seen. The people that are doing the sound, they don't get seen. The people that are outside in the parking lot, maybe you walk by when you see them, but that's it. Or there's people that are in the children's ministry that you just drop off your kids and you don't really see them after that. Or you have people that come to clean the church and you just wondered, how did the church get cleaned? It's clean every time I come because someone was coming without any recognition and was cleaning the church, cleaning the bathrooms. So there's so many things that take place here at Legacy that people get zero recognition. But the great thing about that is it doesn't go unnoticed. People may not notice it, but the awesome thing is, and this is what I think we'd all want, is that if people don't recognize it, God sees it. God recognizes it. And how do we know that? Because we know David was in that same position. David was in the same position. Even his own dad didn't even think this guy can't be the one that's anointed to be king. And he was the last one on the list. He was out tending the sheep. And God saw him right where he was at. God saw him when no one else recognized him, not even his own father. God saw him. So God will find you wherever you're at. We don't need to get the recognition here on the stage. We don't need to get that. So if you feel like, man, I don't know if people even recognize all the things that I do. Maybe it's in your household. Maybe you're at home. It's like, does anyone recognize how I raise my children, how I raise my kids? Does anyone know how I go about my work and how I try to serve people and try to meet people's needs? Does anyone even notice that? And sometimes we want to applause. We want to pat on the back, right? We want to be like, hey, you did a good job, which is okay. I think we try to do that. We try to honor people. We try to be like, you're doing a good job, you're serving, and we try to give recognition. But if you ever get to that place where you're like, I don't feel like I'm being recognized, the good thing about that is that God recognizes it, God sees it, and God's going to be the one that blesses you. The third thing is lead in small things. God sees the small things. When you are faithful in little, you will be faithful in much. So maybe your goal is, your desire is to just be great and have a new ministry, and you want to have a huge small group. Or maybe, that's my always desire is to have a big small group. I want to have a big small group. But sometimes God's saying, when you have that little small group, or whatever you're partaking in, whatever you're doing, that very little thing that you have, be great in it. Because that is when God's going to say, you are faithful in the very little, I can bless you in much. So if you are too big to serve, then you are too small to lead. If you are too big to serve, you are too small to lead. Before you are a great leader, you must be a great servant. And we see these examples throughout the Bible. Moses was called by God when he was serving Jethro. Joshua was serving Moses before he was a leader. David served Saul before he was a king. Elisha was a servant to Elijah before he got anointed. So all of these people in the Bible that ended up being great leaders started out being servants, started out serving other people before they got to that place of leadership. So there's no greater way to lead than to serve. So if you're a business leader, your goal is to improve sales, right? You're trying to get your team from one place to another. So you're trying to improve sales. You're trying to improve revenue. The goal is to improve the bottom line, right? Any great leader, you're trying to get someone from point A to point B. That's what a great leader is. They see vision. They see where they want to take you. Where they want to lead you to. And we are called to do that same thing. So if you're a teacher, your goal is to get all your students to learn, right? You want to get them all on the same page that they're all learning. If you're a leader of a team, you're all trying to pull in one direction to win, right? Without anyone specifically getting all the recognition, but you're trying to get everyone on the same page to move at the same pace. So as a Christian leader, what is our call? What does our call to leadership look like? And I thought about this, and it looks a lot like our vision. As a leader of Kingdom of God, we should influence people first to know Christ. As Christians, leading someone that doesn't know God to know God. That's our first step. As a Christian leader, wherever we are, our first step, if someone doesn't know God, we should be trying to lead them to know God. The next thing, someone that doesn't have freedom, to help them find freedom. Someone that doesn't know their purpose, to help them find their purpose. Someone that's not making a difference, helping them make a difference. Help lead people to get to their next step, because we're all on this journey together. We're all trying to get to the same place. Our ultimate goal is to get to heaven. And so we don't want to go alone. We don't want it to be a selfish Christian and say, I'm going to go, I got it. Forget you guys. You guys could try to figure out your way there. But as many people as possible that we would take with us. And what does that take? That takes us dying to ourselves, saying, you know what, I'm going to be selfless. I'm going to help that next person get from point A to point B. If they don't know God, I'm going to help them to know God. I have one of my clients that I'm working with right now. I've been working with her for about 4 years, and she's an atheist. So for a long time, I avoided any conversation with her that I was like, we might butt heads. I just kind of avoided it. And what's happened is over time, I've just tried to show her, I'm just going to try to just show her love, try to show her like Christians, because she had one bad situation with a Christian, and she thinks all Christians are like that. She goes, I felt so judged. They looked at me funny. They didn't want to sit by me. So she had this bad thought of what Christians were like. And so he said, I heard that, and I said, okay, what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to show her that Christians aren't like that, that Christians got to serve even the unbeliever, that Christians got to be there. Those are the people we really got to win over, right? We're trying to get people to heaven. We got to serve those people that don't know God yet. And so as time went on, I've been able to have conversations with her about God. And what you find out is when people start to open up, they really don't know a lot about God at all. They have these thoughts that maybe they hear from someone else that aren't really true. So I've been slowly talking to her about God. She'll ask me about the Old Testament and why certain things. So she had no idea. And slowly these seeds are being planted over and over. And I hope that she's actually watching this right now. She might be tuning in. So I hope that she's watching that, because I told her, ultimately, she said, as we had these conversations, she said, it's really nice having these conversations with you. And I said, yes, but don't forget that my ultimate goal is to get you to know God. I said, my ultimate goal, I have no hidden agendas. I'm telling you right now that I want you to know who Christ is. And so we got to do that. It makes me stay on guard. Like every time I'm around her, I got to show her the love of Christ. I got to serve her, because that's the only way. Sometimes people only encounter with God will be with you. Their own idea of God will be through you. So wherever we are at, it's a chance to win over God. It's a chance to win them over to God. So how do we help people take their next step? Love people, have compassion for them. It's going to look different for each and every one of us, because we all have different gifts. Some of us are just really empathetic people and just loving people, and by you being there are going to make them feel secure. They're going to make them feel good because they feel the love of God through you. Wow. Sometimes people are more like to get theological and talk to them and break down scriptures and stuff. Some of us are like that, and that may help them get to God. But sometimes it's just encouraging someone, talking to them, because sometimes a lot of people, they have no one to let it out what they're going through. So if you can be that ear for them, that will help them see the love of God through you. In 2 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 8, it says this. It says, I may seem to be boasting too much about the authority given us by the Lord, but our authority builds you up. It doesn't tear you down, so I will not be ashamed of using my authority. So God gives us this authority to lead like we're the salt of the earth, that we would make a different that we would be different and we would serve different. So this authority that God's given us to lead, because I believe that we're all called to lead here, and he's given us this authority, and it's not for personal gain. It's not to dominate others. It's not for control. It's not for personal leverage. It's not to better position ourselves to get more money. I know that happens in the workplace. People use their authority, their leadership to get what they got to get. But God says, I don't want you to lead that way. I want you to lead different, that you would put yourself second to them. Our authority is not for the destruction, but for the construction of others. Our authority is not for the destruction of others, but for the construction of others, to build people up. Our authority is to build, not tear. The authority God gives us is to benefit others. In John chapter 13, Jesus gives us this example of washing the feet. And I was going to have my wife come up, and I was going to let her wash my feet to give an example, but she passed. I tried to talk her into it, but she didn't want to wash my feet up here. But he gives this example of what servanthood is. And he's washing their feet, and they even say, no, you can't wash our feet. And God says that I'm going to do this, but it's going to be an example for all of you to do to each other. And what does that represent, the washing of the feet? It means serving other people. Because as we live in this world, we are going to get dirty. Our feet are going to get dirty. He was washing the feet because he says, you don't need to be fully baptized. You guys have been baptized. You guys are believers, but your feet are going to get dirty. Your feet are going to get dirty from this dirty world. As we walk in this world, we're going to get polluted with sin. And so as we serve people, we're helping clean people's feet. That's what we're doing. As we encourage, we're cleansing people's feet. I have a little daughter, and you will never realize how dirty the ground is or the floor is until you're ready to take her to bed and you see her feet at the end of the day and you're like, those are some dirty feet. Our floors are filthy. That's what the world we live in. We don't realize how dirty the world is until we go to clean someone's feet. Until we go and make that effort to be compassionate with someone, to serve them, to love them, then we get to see all the dirt. Until then, we don't see what's taking place. But when you are serving someone, oftentimes when you take the time to listen to someone that looks like they have everything going on, they look perfectly fine, they have a smile on their face, they're happy every day, but then you talk to them and you realize that something deep down is wrong inside of them, and they begin to open up and share with you. And God says the washing of that feet is you're going to see that dirt, but you're going to cleanse it and you're going to wipe it away. And I want you to do that same thing, because this world is going to get dirty. We're going to need to wash our feet because sin is all around us. Sin is in this world. There's no way that we can get out of this world. But when we get cleansed and someone takes the effort to serve each other, then we get a new beginning. We get that cleansing of our feet. So in closing, servant leadership, what does it do? It kills our pride. It kills self-righteousness. It kills jealousy. It kills envy. Servant leadership takes the focuses off of ourselves and puts it on others. I've been in that place where I was like, I need to feel bad for myself. I have it pretty rough. I can't believe I don't have this job right now. I can't believe that I don't own this gym already. There's things that go in my mind constantly that we begin to feel bad for ourselves. So we're like, man, I don't have it that great. And how you cure that is by serving others. Because it takes all of the focus off of yourself and it puts it on someone else. You have no more self-pity. So I stopped feeling bad for myself. I stopped worrying about my situation. And I see there's people out there that are hurting. And I'm worried about some small little things. Why am I worried about the things that I have when I have this faith in God that I should trust in Him no matter what takes place, that God's going to meet every need that I have? But yet, sometimes I want to feel self-pity for myself. I'm like, man, I have it bad. If we all want to do that, we could all do that every day. because we all have something that's a little off. But when we focus on it and we just look at it and we just say, I'm going to worry about myself and that's it. I'm going to be selfish. I'm going to worry about myself. Who cares about anyone else? Then it starts to get bigger and bigger and bigger. So the cure for that is die to yourself. Serve someone else. Because that's going to make you see like, man, my situation is not that bad. I actually have it pretty good. God's giving me this gift to encourage someone. I know that oftentimes I don't do it for this pat on the back, but oftentimes when you encourage someone, it could be a simple text message. It can be a simple phone call. It can be just simply building someone up. And they say, man, I needed that word. And you're like, man, I can't believe I impacted someone else. I could stop worrying about the things that I have going on in my life, and I could help build other people up. I can start encouraging other people to reach their calling. Because that's what real leadership is. It's not that you can just reach your calling, but that you have others reach that same calling. That whatever has, that we would boost the next people up, that we would help them get to where God has them to get. Because God has great plans for all of us, and we're going to need each other. We're going to need each and every one of us to help get there, because we can't do it alone. Because it's going to build community. Self-righteous leadership leads to fractured community, and servant leadership leads to unity. Self-righteous leadership will lead to a fractured community because it's all about, I got to get mine. But servant leadership leads to unity. They all come together. If you've ever been on a sports team and everyone is in the same mind and they all have the same goal and everyone's getting along, doesn't care who gets the game-winning hit, doesn't care who hits the home run, you're like, man, I'm just glad we won. And you get this feeling like, hey, we're all for each other. We're all going to pick each other up. Whatever we got to do, I'm going to pick each other. If I'm on the bench, I'm going to cheer hard because I want them to succeed. It's not all about me. It's not about me being the star. I want us to all get there. And when we do that, God sees us in our lowly places. The time where we don't get to shine. It says, I am serving no matter where it is. It could be your workplace. It could be at home. God sees you when you're serving. Even though you don't get applause, God's like, I see you right where you are at. I see you right where you're at. And because you didn't get blessed by people, you didn't get applause by people, don't worry. I got you. I'm going to be the one that blesses you. I'm going to be the one that takes care of you. That's where I want my blessings to come from. That's where I want my blessings to come from God. So if we could all stand to our feet.